Hey guys, how's it going? Fallen Messiah here with another Diablo 4 build guide. This time, we're taking our focus on Pulverize in Season 9 PTR. What can it do and how does it play? Why Pulverize? Well, during the Campfire Chat, devs announced a new item called Rotting Lightbringer, specifically for Pulverize, and during the showcase, it looked really cool. Just being able to create these poison puddles and then pulverizing them again for even more AoE looked really fun. So naturally, I wanted to make a build revolving that. So, in the service of not wasting any of your time, I'm going to cut straight to the point and answer my own question in the thumbnail. Is the item any good? No. It's actually really bad, and it sort of marks a growing and concerning trend where devs introduce a new item for the Druid and miss the mark spectacularly. First, we had Gasman's Birthright that had a good idea. An item speaking specifically for human-only Druid is something the class needs, but it was implemented poorly, and despite several buffs, item still remains fairly useless. And now we get a brand new item that actually solves nothing for us. It doesn't increase our damage or change the way the skill is used in any significant way, which means that it is just not competitive against just your typical standard legendary two-handed mace. This is even more of a problem considering that what they did with our only S tier build, Cataclysm. They absolutely murdered Cataclysm and rendered it completely unusable, which is not how you nerf things. So now all of this results in the fact that Druid is left without a single build that can push the pit levels 90+. But let's get back to Pulverize. What's different compared to the live version? Well, we get a rework of the Ursine horror aspect, which is actually pretty cool, and a new item, which is not that cool. So, what can this build do? Unfortunately, as far as the pit pushing is concerned, in the PTR, Pulverize kind of caps out at around pit levels 80+. You can see my failed attempt at clearing 85 in time right here. I spent days trying to find ways to make it work, but the damage just isn't there. Even though this build isn't fully relying on overpower, the overpower nerf has definitely affected it. However, it's also a great T4 speed farmer with huge AoE, super fast and super fun to play. Now, if this seems fun to you, then sit back and relax as I take you through everything you need to know. And, as always, if you appreciate my efforts, please consider dropping a like and a sub. It helps me out tremendously. Anyway, let's get straight to it. Alright guys, now let's go through the skill tree. First, we're starting with Claw and Enhanced Claw. We mainly use this as a source of werewolf skills, but also it's a nice reliable way to generate spirit as well. Then, 5 points into Pulverize, Enhanced, and Raging. Enhanced Pulverize grants us overpower every 10 seconds. This is one of several ways we have to basically guarantee us overpower. It doesn't happen on every attack, but every couple attacks are going to overpower thanks to a couple of these things that we'll talk about later. We're gonna put 2 points into Iron Fur for more damage reduction. This is actually a pretty tanky build, so you don't need to invest too many points into these defensive passives. We have a lot of them here already. Earthly Bulwark, Enhanced, and Preserving. This is our main source of Unstoppable, and also it grants us more damage thanks to 3 points into Backlash, and also it's a nice source of Barrier as well. 1 point into Ancestral Fortitude just for a little bit more extra resistances. 1 point Debilitating Roar, Enhanced, and Innate. Innate Roar gives us 25% damage multi, which is actually pretty nice bonus, and also Enhanced is a nice source of Fortify as well. 1 point Blood Howl, Enhanced, and Preserving. Preserving Blood Howl gives us a lot of attack speed bonus, which is actually really nice, and just overall Blood Howl is a nice source of healing as well. It also acts as a werewolf skill for our quick shift as well. 3 points into Feral Aptitude, 3 points Crushing Earth, and Stone Guard. These speak to Earth skills, but Ursine Horror actually converts our Pulverize into an Earth skill, so we benefit from these multipliers as well. 1 point into Mending, and 3 points into Provocation. Provocation is a second source of guaranteed overpower. Enhanced Pulverize grants us overpower every 10 seconds, this grants us every 8 seconds, so they synergize pretty well together. 1 point into Neurotoxin just so that we can have 3 points into Envenom. If you know your Druid build, this is pretty much our biggest source of damage multi in the entire skill tree, so all our efforts are kind of focused into maxing out Envenom as much as we can through skills and items as well. 5 points into Petrify, Prime, and Supreme. Petrify is great for this build for several reasons. First of all, we generate tons of spirit back. Second of all, when we cast Petrify, it resets all of our non-ultimate cooldowns, which I will talk a bit in more detail in the gameplay portion of the video. It also gives us 30% extra crit strike damage to all opponents and up to 50% against bosses, which is actually pretty great. Then we get 3 points Defiance, Natural Disaster, and Resonance, 3 points into Catastrophe, 3 points into Quick Shift, another pretty huge damage multiplier, and 3 points into Heightened Senses. And finally, we get 1 point into Ursine Strength. Alright guys, let's talk about items now. So, by far the best slot here is going to be Air or Perdition. It's just a straight up 60% damage multiplier. There's not a whole lot to be said here. It also has some pretty nice stats, all of them are pretty helpful to the build. Core skill directly increases Pulverize damage, but there's also Crit Strike chance, Lucky Hit chance, which I'll talk about later, and move speed of course just fantastic to have. Just look how fast, for example, I'm zooming with all of these movement speeds on my gear, so it's pretty nice to have. For chest, of course, still, Shroud of False Death is the best item in the game, +1 to all passives. Ideally, you want to triple hit all stats, even though max life is pretty fine too, thanks to the overpower, but all stats is the best. Also over here, if you can triple crit core skills, that's the best, but crit strike chance is fine too. Alright guys, for the gauntlets, we're going with the aspect of the Ursine Horror. Ursine Horror makes our Pulverize into the herb skill, and that's why we were able to tap into all these multipliers that I showed in the skill tree. And also, after our Pulverize overpowers, and we do have 3 guaranteed ways to do it, we actually decrease our herb skill cooldowns. This means that our Petrify is actually going to be up fairly consistently, and as long as we have these Petrify duration tempers, we can keep our Petrify uptime pretty much 100% of the time. Not only that, but Earthen Bulwark is also a nerf skill and also gets reduced in cooldown whenever we overpower. So it's actually pretty fun, fluid gameplay. That's why we're so tanky. We don't need all of these defensive passives. Our Earthen Bulwark is going to be up once every couple of seconds. So this reworked aspect is actually really great. For the stats on the item, we're going with Willpower, Max Life, and Pulverize. Whichever masterwork you hit here between these 3 is perfectly fine. For tempers, we're going with Petrify Duration to make sure we have that uptime. For example, if you see here, it lasts for 14 seconds, and trust me, in combat, like, you're gonna get it up far quicker than that, so you have 100% uptime. And because we don't have crit strike chance on the apexes, we're going with the temper Earth Critical Strike chance, which just kind of gives us a little bit more crit chance to play with, making sure we have close to 100%. Now, for the pants, we're going with T-Ball's Will. T-Balls says that we deal 20% increased multiplicative damage while we're unstoppable and for 5 seconds after. Now, our Earthen Bulwark is our main source of unstoppable, and every time we overpower, we get decreased cooldown on the Bulwark. So we'll see that when I showcase the gameplay, you actually have pretty much a permanent uptime of this buff, which is pretty nice. And we also get 50 extra spirit whenever we have unstoppable, and we always need more spirit for our Pulverize, so it just tends to be the best item in slot. It really benefits the build pretty nicely. For tempers, you want all stat and you want max life. Now for the boots, at first I went with Flicker Step, but you actually don't need Flicker Step because I'm gonna show you. See, I'm gonna use Petrify right now, and then bam, bam, bam. See, it's already up. So we do have permanent uptime on Petrify thanks to the Ursine Horror, so we don't need Flicker Step. So I went with Ballistic instead. When we have Fortify, our herb skills gain +2 ranks. You can put something more defensive, or if you want more move speed, you can put more move speed, that's completely fine. Now personally, I really like having tons of move speed, and I think it's pretty fun to have, especially on Torment 4 when you're speed farming. But if you lack more armor and you're not close to the armor cap, which by the way I am once I use the elixirs, 383, but when I use Song of the Mountain and Soothing Spices, see, I have 860. So just something to consider, that I'm pretty close to the armor cap. You can use these instances to cap yourself off, but if you're lacking that, you can definitely put armor instead of life or movement speed. So for example, willpower, life, armor if you're lacking it. But otherwise, go for move speed. It's going to make your build a little bit more fluid. As far as affixes, so as I said, willpower, max life, and move speed is what I'm rocking. And as far as the tempers, we're going with move speed and more petrify duration. Make sure we have that 100% extra duration. Now for the weapon, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. We have to talk about this rotting lightbringer. This is going to be a bit of a rant. We're going to be analyzing this new weapon and why we're actually not using it. So let's read the description. Every 10 seconds, Pulverize forms a puddle that deals up to 400% of its damage as poisoning over 6 seconds. And also when we pulverize the puddle, we splash for additional 10% of that damage around the area. Let me just show you how that looks like. Bam, creates a poison puddle, and then I splash it again. Visually, it looks pretty cool, and it's also another source of poison, which druids always need, but there are several problems with this weapon. Let's start with the obvious. This legendary power doesn't actually multiply our damage, which is what you want, because two-handed weapon is the most competitive item slot in the game. Every legendary aspect gets multiplied by 2. So, for example, now we're rocking Shockwave, which not only gives us tremendous amounts of AoE, it also multiplies our damage by 2.4. The new item just doesn't multiply our damage. So the question is, what does it do for us? Now, granted, it already has this chance for Pulverize to hit twice baked in, so at least it has that going for it. And also, if you manage to triple crit it with your Masterworks, like I did, and if you manage to get a greater affix on it, you can actually get it as close to 100%, which is pretty nice. On Legendary Mace, you can get it up to 77. But still, considering just how much damage we lose if we change to this unique, it doesn't really amount to a whole lot. Now granted, weapon isn't all bad. For example, it has this pretty unique property of percentage willpower, which is usually only reserved for amulets, so it can actually pretty significantly increase our willpower. And also, the cooldown cost reduction, if you get a GA there, you can actually make your Pulverize cost like maybe 20 spirit, even less, which is actually, you know, a cool thing to have. But ultimately, the problem with this weapon is, when you introduce something to the game, you have to ask yourself, what problem does it solve? What does it introduce? So, first of all, not only do we not get damage, but also, this legendary power, it's a poison that's available every 10 seconds for 6 seconds. Not only does it not increase our damage, but it doesn't change the way the skill works, it doesn't give us more utility, it offers poison, but not 100% of the time. So you still need something else if you want to keep your uptime on Envenom and other multipliers that we have going on. So it actually doesn't solve anything. It's not competitive with a two-handed mace. Look at my Masterworks. So I have 240% multiplier on my aspect. I have 12% extra crit strike chance, and I also have a pretty similar chance for Pulverize to hit twice. So I just wanted to rant a little bit, and I wanted to analyze this new weapon, because this is the second time that devs have failed to hit the mark with a new Druid item. We also have Gatlin's Birthright, which in theory should speak to human form Druid, but in reality just failed at it spectacularly. But I will probably make a separate video on that item entirely. But I just wanted to kind of like compare these two items, you know, the legendary mace versus the new unique mace, just to kind of show you that it's actually pretty bad. You know, it doesn't multiply damage, it doesn't provide anything new, it doesn't change the way the skill works, and we have no incentive for us to actually use it. And as you've seen, the poison puddle, the AoE is really not that big to begin with, so we actually have zero use for it. It's not even remotely competitive to a two-handed mace. And that's a problem, because if you design a brand new weapon, you want that weapon to be competitive, especially if it's a unique, with legendary items in the game. So I just don't understand. I don't understand how they could possibly miss the mark so hard. That's just my opinion. What do you guys think about that? In my opinion, this item needs something else. Like, this 390 should just straight up be a multiplier. even though I still don't think that's gonna cut it. And believe me guys, I tried. I tried the Rotting Lightbringer, I tried it with new seasonal mechanic that instantly consumes damage over time, but whatever I tried, it just did not work. Let's actually talk about what I am using. So, of course we're using the two-handed mace for the overpower implicit, and also we're using the shockwave aspect. Not only is it a great source of damage multiplication, but also it just creates this huge AoE, which is amazing for Torment 4. Let me show you how this looks. So, I hit once, for example over here, and look at this shockwave, look how far it goes. And also, if you hit and time it just right, you have this shockwave from Pulverize innately, and you also have it from the aspect. So you can actually hit your opponent with both of these and do even more damage, if you position yourself just right. For Apex, we're going with Willpower Max Life, and this cost reduction is a brick. PTR has this bug where if you fail to enchant your item, but you temper it first, you're not able to re-enchant it. So this will ideally be crit strike damage. For tempers, we're going with Earth Critical Strike chance to make sure we have as close to 100 as possible. And also, of course, chance for Pulverize to hit twice. This is just a straight up multiplier. Make sure to triple crit that with Masterwork if you can. For Amulet, we're going with Retaliation aspect. Our core skills deal up to 113% multiplicative damage based on our Fortify. We will have Fortify up pretty much all of the time, so this is just another great source of damage multiplication. For Apexes, we're going with Willpower, Envenom, and Quick Shift. These are our best sources of damage multiplication. It took me a long time to find an item like this. Trust me, even on PTR, it's not easy. For Masterworks, try to hit Envenom and Willpower pretty much in the same ratio. Now, for the Tempers, this is a brick. I was originally experimenting with Grizzly Rage, but then I just found it doesn't really work. I tried to change the tempers, the PTR would not let me, it is what it is. Ideally, you would have ultimate cooldown reduction and critical strike damage here. Now for ring number 1, we're going with Ring of Star Disguise. This is just an amazing item for a build. More damage multiplier, decreases our spirit cost, gives us more attack speed, more crit strike chance, it's just amazing for us. For Masterworking, try to hit core skills. If you hit attack speed once or twice, that's fine too. And for the ring number 2, we're going with Changeling's Depth. Changeling's Depth, we deal 65% extra damage when we hit a poison enemy as a warbearer, which is going to happen 100% of the time. And for the Apexes, Willpower, crit strike damage, and also, this is very important, lucky hit, chance to make enemies vulnerable. We have several sources of vulnerable, but this is going to be our most consistent one. And Pulverize has a fairly decent lucky hit chance. So this is actually what I went with. And also, my tempers are Petrify cooldown reduction and Earth lucky hit chance. I wanted to get a little bit more extra lucky hit chance because it synergizes really well with lucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable. So this is kind of what I went with and what's also going to be in the planner as well. For Masterworking, try to hit Willpower 3 times if you can. Alright guys, let's talk about seasonal mechanics now. Now, as far as the powers themselves are concerned, I have to say I'm not too impressed. The powers definitely don't seem nearly as impactful as they are currently in, the boss power season or previously in the witch power season. There's one thing that makes our build a lot more fluid, but other than that, what you choose is not really all that relevant, at least not to my knowledge. Unless there's some kind of weird bug or interaction that's not intended, it doesn't really matter all that much. So I went with Celestial Surge, and I also bind it to Pulverize. And the reason why I went for the Surge is because it kind of pulls the enemies in. So it just helps with overall fluidity of the build, brings the mobs a little bit more together so that we can pack a better punch. And also, once you hit, you have this kind of stars falling. It's just pretty, so I guess that's something too. For Infusion, we went with Corrosive Vapor. Now this, in combination with one gem, which I will talk about, allows us to keep our attacks permanently applying poison. This is the most important benefit that we get from the seasonal mechanics. This means this is a reliable source of poison, which allows us to tap into different multipliers, for example, in Venom, Changeling's Depth, and one node in Paragon as well. So this just enables a ton of damage. Anything else, not really necessary. We're also using Tranquil Stone for Unstoppable, which just further feeds into our build, procs the bolts, we gain more damage, we get 50 spirit back, so it's just a nice synergy. Now, Fractured Core is probably going to be everyone's favorite Arcana on any top build going forward in pit pushing. It deactivates damage resistant auras for monsters, and this is so useful. Like, the clear speeds are so much better with this that I believe this is going to be just a core staple in any build pretty much. And finally, I went with Sapping Crux as well. Our Catalyst applies vulnerable, so this, along with our lucky hit chance on Ring, is going to ensure we always have sources of vulnerable, because then we dip into other multipliers and we deal even more damage. Now, as far as the legendary gems are concerned, I personally went with this one, which makes our infusions more potent. To be quite honest, it's not like our infusion deals a lot of damage, but it's just another little extra source of damage that I tried to squeeze into the build, because we already have a lot of Fortify, Barrier. We're already quite tanky, so we don't need any extra resistances or damage reduction in the first place. The second one, I went with this. Our Catalytic skill is a skill that you bind your Catalyst onto. So in this case, our Catalyst is Celestial Surge, and since I put it in this slot, this means that Pulverize is a catalytic skill. So with that in mind, this allows us to benefit from our infusion's element, which is poison. So to summarize, this gem with combination of our infusion allows us to have permanent poison damage on our Pulverize, so quite important really. And finally, I went with this one that gives us 6x primary core stat, 8% max life, and unhindered. These are all great stats, but it comes with this very interesting caveat that basically says that we are going to be hunted by Jewel Guardians. This is actually quite interesting. So these Jewel Guardians have these kind of interesting properties that actually scale with your difficulty. So on Torment 4, you're just gonna crush them, but on Pit 85, Pit 90 plus, they can actually be quite difficult to deal with. But for this build, I think overall they're fine. Interesting thing about them is that they kind of behave similarly to Diablo 3's Nemesis Bracers, if you ever played Diablo 3. In Diablo 3 you had this item, and then if you hit like a pylon, which is kind of like a version of a shrine, it would spawn an additional elite pack, which would basically mean that you would have even quicker progress through Greater Rifts, which is the Diablo 3's version of the pit. And these Jewel Guardians that appear randomly actually do give progress in the pit when you kill them. So that's just kind of an interesting extra, mechanic on top of everything else. I think it's quite interesting, really. So it actually, even though it's supposed to be a hindrance, it can actually speed up your progress in the pit because it spawns additional elites for you, and it spawns right on top of you too. Now, one very interesting thing about this item, which is why I removed it here, these Jewel Guardians can actually even spawn here in the trading grounds, which is actually hilarious, but they're a nuisance. So I decided, I don't want them to bother me while I'm making this video. So I just kind of just removed this item here, but they absolutely spawn in the trading grounds too, which is kind of funny. As far as runes are concerned, I went with Igni Zan. Now, this is another source of a guaranteed overpower, the third one, if you're counting. And it just kind of allows us to get even more overpower attacks. Every time we store resource, we release it with Pulverize or other skills, and then we overpower for a fraction of a time, which is enough for maybe 1 or 2 attacks. The second one is going to be Seer and Zal. Once we cast 5 skills, which is going to happen all the time, then we gain 30% maximum life for 6 seconds. This is going to be a permanent uptime. And also, because the way the overpower works, it scales heavily on our max life and fortify. Even though overpower has been nerfed quite substantially in PTR and Season 9 going forward, this is still a pretty strong rune word to have, but you can put something else if you really want, I suppose. If you're struggling with the resource, you can put Loom instead of Zal, and then you're gonna have a little bit more spirit going forward. On Thibault's Will, we're going with Willpower Gems, and for the weapon, we're going with Critical Strike Damage Gems. And now let's jump into the Paragon board. Generally speaking, when I do this, I always put the Paragon board in the planner as well, so you guys can follow along. Now, I'm not going to do this time because I'm really hoping that they're going to kind of change things up as far as the item is concerned, because right now it's just way too weak. Hopefully, Pulverize gets a little bit more love in the patch notes, in the changes after the PTR ends. So I'm just going to wait to see what they do, and then I'm going to adjust the Paragon board accordingly. However, if you guys really want me to make a separate Paragon board for the planner, just feel free to say so in the comments, and if enough of you are interested, I definitely will. But generally, this is my general philosophy. So, as always, make sure you always have both bonuses on your glyphs and all legendary nodes, and then you're pretty much golden. Any other spare point, as you can see, I didn't even invest all of it. It's basically just for extra defense, extra armor, and resistances. The first one I'm starting out with is Spirit. This gives us a lot more critical strike damage. Second board is Earth and Devastation. Now, because our Earth Sign Horror aspect turns our Pulverize into an Earth skill as well, we actually benefit from this bonus. You want to make sure that this is 60% at all times. The good thing about this board is that it kind of procs itself if you follow along with what I'm doing. So the second glyph is Fang and Claw, which actually boosts magic nodes within range, and magic nodes happen to be damage to crowd control enemies. So this kind of procs itself. You don't actually need to have separate items for it, which is great. So the second glyph is going to be Fang and Claw. Third board is Survival Instincts. We're in Vertebrate form pretty much most of the time, so we benefit from this. It's just another huge multiplier. Third glyph is going to be Shapeshifter. It grants a bonus to rare nodes. So you can grab along these Grizzly and Battle-Worn Hide. This is especially a pretty nice bonus to life. We get over 1000 life and fully capped out, just from one node, which is pretty cool. Fourth node is Hide and Malice. While a poisoned enemy is nearby, and we're poisoning them all the time thanks to our infusion, we gain more damage. Fourth glyph is going to be Headhunter, and final node is going to be Sinister Tendrils. Our nature magic skills do more damage, and the final glyph is going to be Earth and Sky. And now I'm just going to quickly demonstrate the gameplay. It's really not complicated, So basically, we have Quick Shift, one of our biggest damage multiplication, means that we want to transition from Werewolf to Werbear, back and forth, but this happens naturally. So I just hit with Pulverize, it's going to overpower immediately. Then I will be hitting with my Claw to get my Spirit back, but I don't actually do that all that often because our Petrify is gonna give us Spirit back, our Earthen Bulwark is gonna give us Spirit back thanks to Thibault's Will. So I just kind of blast Pulverize, and then every now and then I hit with the Claw, but this doesn't happen all that often, just every once in a while. And then as I hit Pulverize, I hit Petrify, and then look how fast my cooldowns drop with Petrify, It's immediately up. So I have 100% uptime on Petrify. And then of course we just hit Blood Howl and we hit Debilitating Roar every time they're off cooldown. And we do the same with Earthen Bulwark, just because we want to proc Unleash passive and because we want to proc the boss as well. So basically, you just kind of hit things off cooldown. And as you can see, our Petrify, every time we gain it, it also, drops cooldown for everything else. So then you can just hit it again. You can see Shockwave from this angle better. And that's pretty much it. We're just blasting things, with our Pulverize. If something is, off cooldown, you hit it. And that's it. So very rarely do I actually need to replenish my Spirit thanks to the Petrify, and thanks to the Earthen Bulwark anti-ball combination, And when you do, you just hit a couple of times with the Claw and you get your Spirit back. And that's it. We have a permanent uptime for Petrify, pretty much. We cast Roar, we cast Blood Howl, we cast Earthen Bulwark, and that's the gameplay. In Torment 4, it absolutely crushes, it has this huge AoE, and it just melts opponents. And there you go, guys, that has been the entire build, Pulverize for Season 9 PTR. I do hope things change for the better, numerically speaking, and not just for Pulverize, but for Cataclysm, for other Druid builds in general, because state of the Druid right now is not good. So for all of us who, love the Druid in Diablo 4, and it's probably my favorite class as well, I hope things get a little bit better. But this is just PTR, this is just for testing, you know. Previous experiences kind of teach us that, you know, they deliberately bring things down a little bit more, and they bring things up a little bit more just so they can see how they behave. So I remain optimistic that they're going to see the results that the Druid is currently not doing well, and they're going to be bringing things back up a little bit. For example, this new weapon definitely needs to pack a better punch, and also other Druid builds, like for example Cataclysm, should, you know, be buffed a little bit more. The nerf was a little bit too serious in my opinion. But anyway, that has been Pulverize. Even if it doesn't, you know, get better than this version, it's still a really fun build to play and blast in Torment 4. It absolutely, you know, destroys monsters in Torment 4. It has super nice AoE, you know, we overpower all the time, and they have 100% uptime on Petrify. Well, that's gonna be it for me, guys. As you probably know, these videos take a long time to make, everything from testing to trying out new things to see how they work to editing. So if you appreciate these efforts, please consider dropping a sub and a like. I really appreciate that. It really means a lot to me. Thank you for watching. I'm Fallen Messiah, and I'll see you in the next one.